Dungeons and Dragons, not worshipping demons. Hello, ladies, gentlemen, dragonborns, gnomes, elves, and the rest of you. In the world of humans, there's logic and then there's fantasy. In the world of fantasy, there could be anything. In the world of fantasy came video games, fantasy books, board games, and much more. More specific fantasy creations are Spider-Man, One Punch Man, dragons, and they're all fantasy. But not everyone thinks that fantasy creations are holy creatures that God would approve of. One not approved fantasy game is Dungeons and Dragons. Most people think that Dungeons and Dragons will spiritually hurt you after death due to worship of demons. But Dungeons and Dragons is not about worshiping demons. In the eyes of most Christian religious people, they believe that Dungeons and Dragons is the worship of demons and worship of the devil. In the 80s and 70s, this type of stuff was associated with suicide by teens and violence. The first incident was in 1979 when a kid named James Egbert was missing and found dead. The investigators found him dead and his family was scared and very sad. The parents who would never see their son again. People claim that D&D drove him mad, but that should be impossible unless he was mentally unstable or was pressured to commit suicide or could have been thinking of suicide long before playing Dungeons and Dragons. This is one reason people use to think that Dungeons and Dragons is demon worship. People think Dungeons and Dragons is evil and is about doing devil magic and worship. Now some of this can be true if the player wants it to. When making a character, a player could pick a race or religion that has to do with demon worship, but it's their choice if they do that. If you want to play some D&D and want to avoid demon related things, then the first thing to do is to ask your DM, also known as Dungeon Master. Ask them if sometime in the game they would do demon related things. Usually the answer is no. Then choose a race and class that would be less demon-like, such as human who is a wizard, or a dragonborn who is a barbarian. A race to stay away from would be drows and maybe goblins unless you think they are not demon-like. Those are most likely races that would be followers of demons. Characters in the game could worship anything or nothing. It is completely the player's choice. The game revolves around the players. They could choose where they want to go. They choose their goals. They choose the backstory of the character. It is the player's choice. The DM does not control the adventure. No, they are there to lead the adventure and make the enemies for you to fight, and the towns, people, and towns. Now there can be towns where some or all citizens do demon worship, but you can choose not to go to the town or politely ask the Dungeon Master to change the demon worship part and make it something else. If the Dungeon Master does not change the citizens' worship, do not enter the town. Just go somewhere else. Players choose how the story progresses. In progress, players will have to fight an abundance of monsters ranging from homunculus to owlbears. Now in the game, there might be some demon-related creatures to fight ranging from hellhounds to demons themselves. But you will be able to kill demons, which would be the opposite of worshipping them. In the fights, there could be some occurrence where you are under the control of the demon, which would be bad, but there are multiple steps to get out of it. One way is to try to break free of the mind control. Another step would be to knock out your character and make them not be able to move. A good way would be to kill the demon. A less happy ending would be to kill off your character by committing suicide or having your allies kill you, but this would be the very last choice a person should choose. But these are some of the more demon-like monsters. There are way more peaceful and majestic creatures. Some of the peaceful creatures are unicorns, chipmunks, and many more. But in the game, players might have to fight any or all of these creatures. Now here's a good question. If D&D was about worshipping demons, how would it make some lives better than they were before? There was this article I read where these prison inmates were able to play D&D and help them mentally. In prisons, there are racial segregations. But with D&D, there can be different races playing the game. The different races make people have less of an idea of racial segregation than before they played D&D. Could a demon-worshipping game be able to do that in people's lives? No, I don't think it would. Here's one last piece of proof that Dungeons and Dragons is not worshipping demons or the devil. I, Andrew Moore, am religiously Christian, and I play Dungeons and Dragons with my youth group friends who are also Christians. This is what I have to say about Dungeons and Dragons and how the game does not revolve around worshipping demons. Thank you for listening.